But anyway, enough about that. I also have continued reading Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Dude, this story is phenomenal. It really is I dare to say, and I'm about halfway through now. I am almost exactly halfway through. I can actually check, but I believe I'm on episode like 130, no, 160 or 70 something. I'm opening up Webtoons to check right now. I am on episode 170. That's the episode I'm reading right now. And there's a little over 300 episodes.
Okay.
Of the web novel. So I do find it hard to call it a masterpiece, even though I think what I've read up into this point is a masterpiece. I don't want to call the entire show a masterpiece just because I haven't finished it yet, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, essentially. And it's still ongoing, even once I get to that 300 mark. It is still ongoing, but dude, this story is so good. When it gets adapted into an anime, you're watching it immediately. Like, I am making you watch this immediately. Again, it hasn't topped One Piece or anything like that, but I think if this story continues being as good as it is going to be a top 5 story for me. Because the character growth, like, not necessarily even the character, the complexity of the characters, in the sense of, I guess I'll bring up an example of one of the things that's happened in the past, like chapter or episodes that I've read, is the next scenario, or I guess technically there's been 2 scenarios that I've read through since I last talked about it. One of the scenarios is they're essentially put into this other world. They're isekai'd into another world.
Okay.
And they're presented with every scenario that they run into. There's that main challenge that they have to complete. And obviously, Dokja, the main character, has read the story before. So, and that's actually an interesting thing, because we're getting to the point where he's done so many things to change this story that he's having a harder and harder time predicting where things are going to go. And it's actually getting him in trouble. Which again, I think is just done. If everything just worked out for him every single time and nothing deviated from the original story, it'd be like, okay, that's a little far-fetched. He's changed so many things. The story has to have changed at this point.
Yeah.
And he is actually getting in trouble because of that now. There's been some moments where he's like, oh, this is going to work out for me because I already know where the story is going to go. And all of a sudden you have that moment where he has that realization of, oh shit, this isn't the story that I know because I've already changed so many things.
Yeah.
But anyway, the 2 main arcs that happened was, one, they're isekai'd into this other world. It's called Peace Land. It's this land that is these really, it's basically tiny people. They're like this tall, and they are the ruling race or ruling beings of this world. And the main characters who get brought in there, they're presented with the challenge, and the challenge says, lead the ruling race of this world to extinction. So essentially, their job is to slaughter all of the tiny people on this planet, and basically become the catastrophes that they just stopped for their own world in the last scenario. Because in the last scenario before this, they had to stop the catastrophes who were ready to wipe out their world. Now, they just stopped their own world from being destroyed. They are now becoming the catastrophes to wipe out this other world. And obviously, that's a huge moral quandary, because if they don't do it, they're presented as they will die. So what would you do in order to survive? Are you willing to not just kill someone or kill, literally, the challenge isn't kill this racist leader, it is literally lead them to extinction.
Kill the racist leader.
That means kill every single, you're leading them off the face of the earth. Are you willing to lead another race to extinction just for your own benefit? Now, there are characters who get isekai'd into this other world who immediately start slaughtering. They just immediately start killing, brutally murdering these tiny people because, they want to survive. They're presented with a scenario. Now, this is where Dokja's prior knowledge comes in handy, because he knows that if he doesn't kill any of them, he'll be presented with a secondary scenario. Now, that secondary scenario is a long time afterwards. Like, he has to wait like quite a while for the scenario to come up. And in the meantime, he's being chased by the people who are actually killing the small people, because Doja's trying to stop them from killing the small people, and they don't like Doja trying to stop him, and his friends. He has his other friends with him. You have I'm going to screw up all their names, but you have Pildu comes back, one of my favorite characters in the entire manhwa. Pildu is a greedy bastard, but he is amazing. He is so funny. You have Songa, I believe is maybe how you pronounce her name. Kind of the main love interest of the story. Even though this story doesn't really play into love all that much, it is still interesting. But anyway, they're isekai'd into this other world. They have to kill all the small people. And basically, if they don't kill the small people, they themselves then become small. They actually shrink down to the size of these people. And that's when they're presented with the next scenario of, okay, you didn't want to do this scenario. Your actual scenario is prevent these people from going extinct. And again, that's where Doja's prior knowledge comes in, where they could have easily just slaughtered them and they would have technically completed the scenario. But is that a morally right thing to do? No, it's not. Like, I think we can all agree that the extinction of another race for your own benefit is not a morally great thing to do. I mean, yeah. But he gets presented with a second scenario, and that's where he now has to fight as a little person, as this tiny little creature, against full-size human beings who are looming over him. And I won't get too much more into detail on that because I don't want to talk about the other arcs that I read. But after that, it's just phenomenal action. The art in this never ceases to amaze me. It is beautifully drawn. It takes advantage of the fact that it's written on a straight, like, sometimes you'll literally have to turn your phone sideways and you'll just scroll, and it's just one of the most beautiful art splashes you'll ever see of action or a character like moment. It is phenomenally drawn as always. The next scenario I don't know if this is technically the next, but another scenario that they're put into is he actually goes to the underworld. So I think I talked about last week that one of the catastrophes they befriend, but then they're forced to kill. He can't accept that catastrophe died. He doesn't want to accept the fact that they're dead. So he actually makes a deal with Persephone, the wife of Hades, because that's the thing. Some of these myths, the whole point of the story, or not the whole point, but a big thing of the story is these myths that we know, whether that be the Olympians, whether that be the Garden of Eden and Jesus, they're actually real. And all of them are real at the exact same time, which is a very interesting thing. But Dokja makes a deal with Persephone. Specifically, he actually makes a deal with the god of ecstasy, and god of alcohol and ecstasy, who is the child of Persephone. But anyways, he goes to the underworld and he has to essentially swoon the Persephone into allowing him to take the catastrophe's soul back, which he semi-succeeds at. It's actually really interesting where, again, it doesn't go exactly as he planned, but it ends in a way that is still ongoing. So I can only talk so much about it just because I don't know where it ended up. But you have that, and then the scenario that we're currently in, or it's not really a scenario, the next scenario is essentially all the characters in each dome are put into this. There is a church who comes in, who is essentially their entire goal as a church. And it's called a church because it's a cult. It's not trying to play on religion necessarily. It's literally just a cult that's called a church. But their whole goal is to free everyone of the scenarios. They want to. Their basically whole point is like, why are we bowing down to these beings who are making us go through all these terrible things? And the leader of this cult is someone who is a reincarnator. So essentially, and it's actually explained how their powers work, and it's really, really interesting. And that is, every time they die, they don't get reincarnated the way that you would think. Their soul actually takes over the body of the thing that, well, it takes over a new body that is born into the world at the same time of his death, but that body is of the same species that killed him. So he, like, for instance, he becomes a snake because in one of his lives, I can't remember exactly what he was when he got killed by a snake, because it's gone over pretty quickly in like a flashback sequence.
Sure.
But it ultimately goes to, he is killed by a human, and in his next life, he is reborn as a human. Or I should say they, because technically they're like, their gender is a big question mark, because they aren't necessarily like, gender doesn't matter when you're reborn into a different body, whether it be male or female, every single time. Like, it's not really a construct that matters to them, because again, they start out as like nothing. They start out as like a bug animated, and then they get killed by a snake, and they get reincarnated as a snake. And anyways, this character has a really big emotional connection to the, I cannot pronounce his name, but Jungkook. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he is essentially the like main character of the original story that Dokja read. And the only reason they have this emotional connection is because that character Jungkook, or whatever his name is, I Korean names are hard, okay, man, I'm sorry. But it is they understand the being reborn thing, because his whole thing is he's a regressor who gets reborn after he dies as well. It's a little bit different than a reincarnator, but they feel this like personal connection. And ultimately, to stop my rambling, what ends up happening is they get put into a scenario where they are being bombarded with stronger and stronger monsters every 4 hours. And there's two ways to survive the scenario. One, defeat all the monsters, which is literally impossible, because the monsters will get to levels in which you just cannot beat. Or the strongest character in the dome has to die. Now, they don't know who the strongest character is. There's a comment that's made of, oh, well, the strongest character will know who they are. So everyone starts making assumptions about who the strongest characters are. A lot of people believe that it's the leader of this cult, because the leader of this cult is very, very strong. They're very, very powerful. But most people believe that the strongest character is the main character of the original story, that I will not even try and pronounce this. Jay. We'll call him Jay, because I'm not going to try and pronounce his name again. But most people believe that Jay is the strongest. Because again, he is the main character of the original story. He's the protagonist. He has to be the strongest. Turns out that that's not the case. It's actually Dokja, the main character that we're following. And he actually, like, he pits the cult leader and Jay against each other in a fight to make people believe, oh, they're the two strongest characters, clearly, so they have to fight each other to kill each other to end the scenario. Meanwhile, Dokja's over in the background basically killing himself. Because now, granted, he can come back for reasons, whatever, he's not actually gonna die. But he's literally dies. Like, he does die, but he can come back from the dead, because of reasons. And he's going through all of this while distracting everyone with the fight. By the way, one of the most beautifully drawn fights. Again, phenomenal art. The dichotomy between the two characters of Jay and the leader of this cult, whose name is also too hard to pronounce, so we're just going to call him the leader of the cult, is really interesting. Of, like, I guess, the motivations of each character. And one of them wants to, like, essentially, it turns out that the leader of this cult, it's like I've never experienced true death before, so I don't really have any remorse for killing and other human beings. Like, I actually don't care ultimately. As much as I say I do, I ultimately don't. Because I've never experienced death, so I don't understand the gravity of it. And Jay does understand the gravity of it, but also has that degree of every time I die, I can just come back, but it works very differently where he goes back to the start of the entire scenario and story. He doesn't go back to where he was. He doesn't get born into another body. He just comes back. And it's, again, their dialogue while they're fighting is just so well written. And in that fight of what's right and like, is it right to just kill because you can be reborn and because you don't understand death?
Sure.
Yeah.